Now, in a couple of my last videos, I got a few questions asking why I'm using that particular tool for that specific job, and if there is alternative, and why I'm not using something else. So I hope in this video to clarify that and help you out understanding why I'm using that tool for that specific job. The first task is to rough this ball out, or actually true it up. If you remember, I used this lovely piece of rippled spalted ash, this particular ball here, for a few of my videos, and I hope in this video to actually finish it. I never got around to hollow it out, so hopefully in this video we're going to finish it. Now, the first and the biggest question is always, why am I using spindle gouge instead of ball gouge? Now, I'm not exclusively using on the outside of the ball spindle gouge. Sometimes I use ball gouge, depends on the mood, and but usually it is spindle gouge. Now, as you know, I was taught by Richard Raffan a lot. He's my mentor, and the reason behind using a spindle gouge is most of all cost effective. It's much cheaper than equivalent ball gouge, and it does the job pretty well as well. Now, if I need a little bit more strength, for instance, for hollowing, I would use a ball gouge. But here I can show you that both methods work beautifully, and there is a saying that you should never use a spindle gouge on a cross grain work, which is not true, I would say. Spindle roughing gouge, which is totally different animal, is something that, or it's a tool that you really don't want to use on a cross grain work like this. But regular spindle gouge or continental spindle gouge can be used on a cross grain work. I usually use spindle gouges only for outside. Sometimes if it's smaller piece, then I would hollow it out just to use one tool in my hand. But that's pretty much why I'm using spindle gouge, and it works beautifully. So as you can see, it's really at around 1000 RPM. So first I'm just going to true it up. The rest goes down, so I'm cutting at the center height. So you can see that works quite nice. Again, I can use 16 mil ball gouge. Both are doing the job really nicely. Of course, this is more stable tool because it's bigger diameter, different kind of profile, and once we get to the hollowing, I'll explain why I'm sometimes using 16 mil ball gouge and sometimes a 12 mil ball gouge. So the next task is, and I got a few questions also here, why am I using, let's say, a refiner to refine the bottom here of the bowl, instead of like using something like a square end scraper. Now, if you can see here, I hope you can, let me just adjust the focus. So these tools have different kind of profile. Now, refiner is on the left and square end is on the right. If you can see, refiner has a little bit more curve to it, and it's also curved to the left, where refiner, the square end scraper is curved slightly to the right. Now, I want this to be slightly dished, so this is just a tool that does the job more naturally. And again, I don't want to have a big hollow here. I just want to have it enough so the outside portion of the bowl is actually sitting on the on the table and nothing in between here. So just a common sense here, this tool is actually perfect for it, as this small curve here will actually translate easier, and it will be much easier to get nice flowing curve here on the inside of the foot here with refiner or some similar tool like this. Now, why I'm not using, let's say, something like this, which is, many of you have a sort of a bullnose scraper. Now, you could do something similar to this with this tool. However, it's much more difficult to gauge the nice flowing curve using a very narrow point of contact in this tool here, which again is, if you just start to use it, you will get small coves. Hope you can see that. Where if I'm using refiner, since it's a much smoother curve and shallower curve, I'm already getting a flatter curve, let's say. So in this case, I'm just going to raise the rest slightly. Now light pressure. That feels quite nice. And the surface is actually rather nice as well. And if I show you with a ruler and a little bit of light underneath, you can see nice shallow curve, and only the outside portion of the foot is actually resting on the table. So that's why in this scenario, let's say, a refiner is much better option if I want this kind of shape. If I want something else, then some other tool with a similar shape would do the job better. So the next task is to mark the foot here. I'm using always calipers because for me it's the most accurate way of marking a specific diameter. So I place the left leg of the calipers or dividers into the wood, and you never want to touch the wood with the right leg here. And these two need to line up points. So if I go, let's say, here, so I hope you can see the outline of the way up here. You can see that these lines don't match up at all. So when they meet nicely together, then you have the perfect diameter that you need. Now I would also point out that you can mark diameter using a ruler. So you can mark the very center, and then you can, let's say I need 50 mil diameter, so 2.5 mil from both sides. You can do it while the lathe is running, or you can stop it and do it that way. For me, it's just a little bit more inaccurate way. So 2.5, that will be here, and then you can rotate it and mark it that way. Both methods work, but for me, due to speed and everything, marking with dividers is much better and faster option, and it's really, really accurate. This is my line for the foot. Now, why here would I use spindle gouge instead of a ball gouge? Now, my spindle gouge has a point. Hope you can see it has a nice sharp point to it, and you can get into nice tight corners, where something like an asymmetric grind like this, this angle from here, where actually let me just grab a pencil. So this angle here and the bevel here are roughly 90 degrees, maybe slightly less, maybe slightly more, depends on the day, since I'm freehand sharpening. So if I use something like a ball gouge, I could do it. The reason why it's vibrating like that, the top here isn't all that flat, or the recess on the top that I made is not perfectly flat. So you can see I can get into a corner roughly. However, so I hope you can see here that it has this kind of a really subtle curve, small curve here, and that will prevent jaws from seating properly, and it will distort the ball when I want to hollow it out. So this is the reason why I use spindle gouge here. You can use 1/2 inch spindle gouge like this one here. And I tuck it into a corner like so and drag it out. Now I have nice sharp corner where jaws can register. Now usually I would use something like a 10 mil spindle gouge. It's slightly better for details, it gives a little cleaner cut, but it's not absolutely necessary. And also, if it's a slightly different kind of detail, it has a much longer bevel, as you can maybe see here if I compare the two. So it's a much, I can get in a tighter corners, let's say. Like so. So I have a nice crisp corner, hope you can see, and the jaws will register here nicely. Now I'm using step jaws from Richard Raffin, and this is just going to bottom out here in the chuck. So, and it's a slightly too big of a, or too tall of a tenon, doesn't really have to be like that. So I'll slightly reduce the height. Nice light touch. There we go. Now it feels actually slightly rougher, but that could be due to the grain. No, it did slightly pulled up here. And that feels like a good surface. Again, I can use this notch just to make a quick decoration. And we can clean it up from this end. And that's ready for sanding. That's now really nice and clean detail on the bottom. Now it's time to actually, or maybe I won't curve the foot, just maybe take this sharp point away. Again, here you can use pretty much any tool. You can use skew, you can use whatever you like. I just, whatever tool that I have in my hand or closest to me, I will just take that sharp point away. And so that's this end done. The next task is to get nice shape going here from the bottom of the foot up to the top of the ball here. Now you might be tempted to use a refiner or any kind of scraper like this to shape the ball here, but in this case I have quite a bit of wood here, so all this corner has to go. It's not very pleasant here, and I can actually show you this. Bear with me. So I hope you can see the horizon a little bit better. So this is way too bulbous here, and we have quite a bit of wood here, so I can get a little bit better pleasing curve. Now for this task I could use 1/2" ball gouge, I could use 16mm ball gouge, I can use a spindle gouge even. It's an outside curve, so pretty much any tool will work quite nicely. The reason I now go with ball gouge instead of like using the scraper, again, I have quite a bit of wood here left, and with the gouge I get a little bit better shape, let's say, or rough shape, and then I use refiner, let's say, just to refine that surface to a little better profile, let's say. So the tool rest needs to go down a little bit. Here I just grab a 1/2" or 12mm diameter ball gouge. Speed is 1000 RPM. Now the reason I went slightly slower here, you probably heard vibrations here, and that's in some cases quite normal. Again, the recess I've made on the top, I made it in a slight hurry, so it's not completely flat, so it's not the best in this case, at least. But nevertheless, if you go slowly and if you're neutral with the gouge, you can see the surface is pretty much pristine. But this is where using a refiner comes to a really nice come in handy, and that is removing this ridge here, blending from bottom of the foot to the rest of the curve here. And I also have a little mark here, maybe you can see it here. So I just want to refine this surface that I have it here. I rarely go sanding right after a nice push cut. I usually do get nice flowing curve, but again, I'm also using a foot like this and so on, so I could not get or start the cut right from the corner here. So again, refiner, a really light touch. And now I can use it as a shear scraper. Slight hump here. That's better. And I always move in smaller increments, never try to go in a single pass all the way, because you won't be able to get it. Okay, so that's now ready for sanding. That's a really gorgeous piece of timber. And so that's what I'm going to do real quick. Sand it, and then we'll see the tools about the inside here. Also, few questions asking why am I using inertia sander at the end, and or also why am I using after the drill here. And now the drill, as you know, you want to sand against the rotation, so the rotation, if this one goes up like so, you want the ball coming down to that edge, that half of the pad here. Now where the difference is with the inertia sander, and this one is homemade by the way, is the rotation will follow the rotation of the ball. So you can see here. What that will do for you is remove most of the sanding marks, just because it works in the same way. And now on the outside I usually sand by hand and then use the inertia sander, unless it's a big ball and a nice big flowing curve without any details or foot, then I would use a drill because it's much faster. But always at the end I use inertia sander. It just gives, at least to me, slightly better surface. Now for the inside, as you'll see, I use primarily, or in most cases, the drill, and also I would finish it off if I can with inertia sander. We can flip this around and you can see the recess I used here, but it wasn't flat here, so I got a few of the vibrations. Now, as you might guessed, I'm turning this relatively slow, so up to 1000 RPM, and the reason for that is this has slightly different density patches, let's say this piece. So although it's mostly chewed up, this area only, maybe this one, is slightly out of balance. There is a lot of figure at one end, the other has a little bit more spalting, so this just creates a different density areas. And although I would like to spin it faster, that doesn't mean that I can't spin it faster. And when you have a wobbly or this kind of disbalanced timber here, then turn it at the speed that it's stable, so the lathe is not jumping around. Hope you can hear that or see. So if I go higher, then it starts to rattle a little bit. So I'm dropping down to 1050, 60 RPM. That's good enough. And that's another key point, is you don't always have to have big speed in order to have a nice cut. As you saw, all of the outside was done in this speed and it turned out quite nice. So it's more on the technique and feed rate and everything, instead of just always relying on speed to cut things cleanly. Now, just for the sake of the demo, let's say that I want to make a tray that needs to be flat. In this case, obviously it's a ball, but we're going to use this flat surface here. I did get that kind of question, why would I use something like a square and scraper instead of, like, again, going with a refiner, which has a sort of a similar but more curved profile here. So again, with a square end scraper like this one, it's much easier to get flat surface, just because this tool is almost flat. It's not flat, it has a nice solid curve to the right and maybe 1 or 2 degrees of angle here to the right again, but this will give you much flatter surface instead of like using refiner or using something like this bowl scraper. You can see a nice radius on it, or even worse, something like a bullnose scraper. So just to show you this, I'm just going to rough this out with the ball gouge. I just grabbed the 16mm ball gouge. And let's say I want to go up to here and maybe go 10mm deep here. So you can rough it out the shape, let's say using a ball gouge. So that's roughly 10mm. So you can rough it out like that and step it out all the way to this line here. Here as well, where you can use refiner, but also it's a much bigger or broader edge here. I brought the camera a little bit differently here so you can see a bit closer. So this is a lot of scraper edge at once, and it's hard to start somewhere. So first of all, I need to raise the rest. So I'm scraping at the center height with the handle raised. So since I made a relief here, I can start with the refiner. Like so. But using a square end scraper, for me at least, it's much more comfortable position at the lathe. And it's much easier to step it out. And again, I'm not using all of the edge. This is 3/4 inch wide or 19mm. Okay, so you can see that works quite well, and the surface left behind, if you are in need to have a surface relatively flat or that flat, it's now quite easy to, let me just grab a smaller ruler. It's now much easier, as you can see, that's pretty much almost flat, a little daylight in the middle here. So it's much easier and much more efficient way of getting a flat surface. But what I'll do now is just raise the burr here, and we'll clean this up. You can see it's quite pulled up. I wasn't careful or anything like that. So this is now pulled burr. So I know in the middle that it's slightly deeper. So I'll step it out, so I'm getting slightly deeper at the end now. And now one nice smooth pass. And you'll see that first the surface is quite nice, and it's almost perfectly flat. So depends on the shape that you need. So it's either a tray or a shallow bowl or anything like that, plate. Depends on the application. That's when you decide which kind of shape or tool you're going to use. So square end, preferably a wider one. So I could have used 1/2 inch square end scraper here, but it's narrow and it will be much difficult to gauge nice flat surface, where something a little bit wider or even 1 inch wide square end scraper would do much easier job here. Now if I show you with why with the bullnose scraper it's much more difficult. So I would either have to use a tool rest as a gauge with my thumb underneath and follow along to get a nice straight surface, and even with that it won't be. So that's using the tool rest as a guide, but it also, if I'm not using that, if you're not comfortable doing that, it's really hard to only, and I hope you can see that I only have like maybe 1, maybe 2 mil here of a wide edge that's approaching the timber, that's scraping the wood. And also that edge is not flat, it's curved, really curved, almost like a circle. So inevitably it will going to make small grooves. So it's much difficult to gauge this surface nice and flat using this tool here. Now we can hollow this out. Now you can use, really it's a personal preference, you can use a 1/2 inch ball gouge. On the inside I usually do use ball gouges. You can use a spindle gouge, it does the job nice. You can see. Now common sense again, I won't be using thin tool like 10 mil spindle gouge, because it will start to vibrate as I'm getting further away from the tool rest. So you need that little strength from parabolic flute or V flute that you have on the ball gouges. So this is 1/2 inch. So that's at the bottom of the hole here. So now I can progress further out and thinking about the shape. Now again, if you want, this is, you can see I'm getting 7 centimeters or 70 mil away from the tool rest here, so it can vibrate. So you can use 16 mil ball gouge, it will do the job really nicely. This tool is relatively new, so it doesn't have yet asymmetric grind, so first I'll use it for a while, and then when I start to grind away, that way I'm going to introduce a asymmetric curve to it. That does the job really nicely. And I always start the cut with closing the flute at 3 o'clock, raising the handle, so I get a single point of entry. Once I'm in the wood, open it up to 2 o'clock, and now you can drop the handle down and proceed forward. Now we can do something with the rim here. Since it's a lovely piece of wood, I'm going to leave slightly wider rim, and we can undercut it from this point. I can thin it down a bit more. So that's pretty good thickness, I will refine it with scrapers. And here is also a good point on which scraper to use on the inside. So usually my bowl scraper looks something like this. This is for shallower or bigger bowls with shallower curves on the inside. But this one here is actually getting quite shallow curve in this section here. Now I could use this one. It has this area slightly shallower curve here where my finger is. So I could use it without too much of a problem. But using something as maybe a refiner here would be a little better choice here, just to continue on with this curve here. Now I'll do that real quick, and then we'll focus on getting this area a little bit cleaned up. As you can see here, I hope we have lines equally spaced, and that's from the length of the bevel on the bowl gouge. So refiner, raise the rest. Raise it up a little bit more. I'm going to stop here for a second. Now a little, let's say, paradox here. If you have the scraper that's really nice matching your curve that you want to cut, you also have to be careful that it's not the exact copy of your scraper edge. What I mean by that is, if you have, or if you engage all of this, this is 1 inch wide refiner. If you engage all of this edge at once, at the same time, so if you have that kind of curve, which in this area here could be really close. If I just plunge it in, it will probably snag quite a bit, because it's a lot of wood to take away with just this profile, this thickness, and the thickness that it's left here on the wood. So something would give away. So usually the timber, and it will just break apart, or you will just plunge out a big chunk of timber on the inside here. So although you want to have a scraper that's tightly matched to your curve that you're trying to scrape, you really always want to use portion of the scraper edge that you're using. So you can see that I'm using here, you have the remains of the dust here and here. So I'm not always using the entire edge. So I just cleaned up the top of the scraper, and hopefully you'll see dust where it comes away. So basically I'm only using, try to show you this third of the scraper, a little less than half. And really light touch. So that's the bottom here, nicely curved. So again, you can use a refiner not only on the outside, you can use it on the inside if the curve is okay, and if it's not too deep of a bowl. If this was slightly deeper, then I would use this one, which is 10 mil thick. It will vibrate much less. So I'll just now continue on going here. Really nice light touch. That's a really nice curve. Now in this area here, I cannot use this one first. The corners will dig in, and I will get really close to that perfect negative curve of the scraper, which I'll talk about. So here I would use this bowl scraper to blend the curve. And you can see how the the scraped edge is traveling all the way around the edge of the scraper. So I'm using just a portion of the scraper at a time. So that's nicely cleaned up. And the surface left behind is actually quite nice as well. That will sand out really quickly. A little rougher patch here, and just to feel that it's nice smooth curve, which it is. I'm quite happy with it. Maybe a slight lump here, so I'll just deal with that real quick. Now, if you have a thinner bowl here, thinner than this one here, you can always, and it's much safer bet, to tilt the scraper, standard scraper, up on its edge and use it as a shear scraper, like so. It will leave slightly cleaner surface, but just be aware that you don't scrape with when you tilt it like this, to scrape with the upper half, because you will get a nasty catch. Or you can use a negative rake scrapers. If it's a really thin bowl. Okay, so that's now really nice. You can see the inside, it's really, really nice, and there is a lot of figure here, and I can't wait to put the oil on to see the surface. So what I'll do quickly is just sand it, and you know what, actually, let me just double check the thickness here. I think I can go slightly thinner. Oh yes, 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 yes. We have here 13 mil, here 14, and here 14 as well. So I won't go too much deeper in the very center, but this edge I can slightly thin it down. I'll use a ball gouge. And again, I'll stop here. Let's go one more time. This area I'll do with a refiner again. And again, oops. And again here in this area, I'll just use bowl scraper with a different kind of profile, just to clean up those marks. I'm using this flat because this is still here a little bit thicker. It's that kind of undercut rim, which I kind of like. So I can, but again, I can use it as a shear scraper without problem. And get nice surface. Blending here. Now I think that's a bit more refined, should be much easier to hold as well, so more pleasant to hold, and yeah, really nice ripple. So I'll quickly sand this and we'll meet here once I sign it, and we're going to be ready for putting the oil on. Right, so I signed the bowl here, you can see it here, and I did get quite a request on making a video how I sign, what I'm using and so on. And just a little spoiler alert again, it's a really simple setup, and I'll do a separate video on how I do it. This is Woodturning oil from Steinert, really nice stuff. I think it's linseed oil with a lot of waxes in it. This oil really pops the figure, the grain and everything. Really nice stuff. Do the inside as well. Again, a lovely piece of ash. You can see the rippled figure here, then almost like a crotch figure or fiddleback here, then again rippled all the way around here. So interesting piece of timber, and again the spalting effect that you see here, all the different colors. I really like this stuff, and it works nicely. Now with this type of oil, you really don't want to wait too long to soak in, because you'll feel how it sort of drags the rag or the paper towel, whichever you are using, and then it's not the easiest way to buff it out or clean up the excess. So, and I hope you can see the reflection a little bit. That reflection would usually show you the high spots, the low spots, and so on. And this one is really nice, flowing curve on the inside without bumps or anything. Really nice, flowing all the way to the bottom. It's not perfect curve in terms of like circle, so the curve can be different. You can imagine like a garden hose, let's say, so, or a necklace or some that's sort of a chain or something. It always is perfect curve, whatever the shape or the curvature of the curve. Not sure how to express it properly, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. So it's nice fluid curve all the way to the bottom without too harsh of transitions or anything like that. So really nice, stunning piece of timber, and I'm really glad I was saving this timber or this bowl to finish it up. And I hope you can see it's a really lovely piece of wood, and the inside especially. So pretty much every piece of grain is covered with some sort of a rippled or a fiddleback or something. So really nice piece of timber. So hopefully this video a little bit explains on why I'm using certain kind of tools at that specific task or moment. And sometimes it's just the mood as well. So for instance, for the spindle gouges, like I said, on the outside, I Can use ball gouge or spindle gouge, but just depends sometimes on the mood which one I'm going to use. But in most cases it's spindle gouge. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.